Good afternoon or evening, everybody, and welcome back to another tropical forecast here by Adrian's Weather Forecast. In this video, we're going to be doing another update here on the tropics for the North Atlantic. Obviously, Hurricane Larry is now finally on a weakening trend for the first time in basically over 4 days. I mean, this storm has obviously been continuing to be a monster storm ever since last week, and it's finally going into the weakening trend, and it is now a Category 2 hurricane and no longer a major hurricane as the conditions become less conducive. Again, this is as of the 5 o'clock advisory, so this is not too old. As well, we do have a special advisory that came out here for tropics for Mindy. Mindy did form not too long ago in a special advisory. It was just an invest, then it became a tropical depression. Then 10 or 15 minutes later, it became a tropical storm with a special advisory. So Mindy surprisingly did form very last minute before, obviously aiming for the Florida Pensacola region there, or sorry, for the Big Bend area, and even as well heading for areas near Mexico Beach. So obviously we're not watching for anything too crazy, just really mainly flooding winds. I mean, not even the winds or flooding rain. Sorry, the winds really won't be too big of a threat, and obviously there's not going to be storm surge. So really, the main thing is going to be really the flooding here. Mindy's not going to be that crazy at all. It's going to be like a Danny 2.0. But there's Larry at 110 miles an hour. So again, it is now a very, very strong Category 2 hurricane. Pressure starting to go up again, 966 millibars, and it is now starting to go again for that northwest movement as the ridge is steering it, as well there's a developing trough, as well as going to keep it from hitting Bermuda. And although Bermuda is under a tropical storm warning because of the rather symmetrical and annular and overall annular and concentrical wind field, that's exactly why Bermuda is under a warning. However, again, they're not going to get really anything too crazy, maybe just a few hours of tropical storm winds, but other than that's not going to be anything too crazy. Again, it's going to obviously not impact any land. May see a little bit of a threats there for Newfoundland, but that's really not going to be too crazy as well. And then there's Mindy at 40 miles an hour with minimal pressure at 1,008 millibars, and is now moving really, really far. I mean, at a very rapid rate, moving northeast at 21 miles an hour. So it's going to make landfall very, very soon here. So I think first we should look at Larry since that's the most interesting storm. So let's go into discussion here. So obviously, it's just going to start weakening from here. So it's going to be 110 for the next 12 hours or so. 110, sorry, for the next 24 hours or so. And then it's going to continue to weaken at a more rapid rate, going to 105 to 100 to 85. So likely to becoming a post-tropical storm or even ex-tropical storm, probably as soon as the next maybe 60 to 72 hours or so. Let's not get a look at the overall wind speed probabilities here. So again, we are going to keep a close eye there on Bermuda. So Bermuda is, I believe, under the tropical storm force wind probability. I think they are under a 40 to 50% with a 50 to 60 just outside their region. So it looks like they're in a 40 to 50 with a 50 to 60 just outside of Bermuda. Because obviously, since Bermuda is so small, it's kind of just going to be one color for the same island. And again, obviously, like I did say, this is going to be just towards the east here, those stronger winds. So really, that's really it for really Bermuda. I mean, they're not like anything too crazy. Here's the overall look at the wind field, and that's why they are under a warning, because as the storm kind of goes like this, based on the overall cone of the outer cone, it's probably gonna actually, let's do that again. It's probably gonna do something maybe like this. So I'm not sure. I think a watch would have probably been more reasonable if I'm being completely honest, because I don't think we're even going to get tropical storm winds sustained. If we do, probably an hour or two. So I think a watch is more reasonable. However, again, they can't really do much about it. But there's the hurricane winds. Obviously, that's not gonna touch anywhere close to Bermuda. And consider as it weakens, this wind field will become more lopsided, and it's obviously gonna become a lot smaller. And as the shear becomes a bigger factor in the dry air, it's gonna just really fall apart, this wind field. So it's even gonna be less closer. Here's a key message though. So large swells generated by Larry will continue to affect the Leeward Islands, portions of the Greater Antilles, the Bahamas, Bermuda, and the east coast of the United States and Atlantic Canada through the end of the week. These swells will likely cause life-threatening surf and rip current conditions. So although again this is not going to be anywhere close to the United States, it's going to bring in some dangerous potential life-threatening in some cases rip currents for specifically the East Coast, as well including Bermuda. And so that when I mean East Coast, all the way basically from basically the Carolinas all the way up to Newfoundland and that general vicinity. So and I'll really watch out for surf there as well. Overall rip current. The center of Larry is forecasted to pass east of Bermuda on Thursday, but given Larry's large size, tropical conditions are expected there. So they have a looks like there's a typo there Thursday, along with a risk of coastal flooding. A tropical storm warning is in effect for Bermuda, and an interest there should be closely monitored for the latest forecast updates. Larry is forecasted to move near over portions of southeastern Newfoundland late Friday and Friday night as it undergoes transition to a hurricane force to post-tropical cyclone. There is an increasing risk of impacts from high winds, rainfall, and storm surge in portions of Newfoundland, and interest there should monitor updates to the forecast. So, gonna still watch out for some decent impacts for Newfoundland. But let's go Mindy here, because obviously this is the big interesting one here, the really surprising one. So let's go ahead and look at the overall key message. So Mindy's expected to produce heavy rainfall for the Florida Panhandle into southern portions of Georgia and South Carolina through Thursday morning. This rainfall may produce isolated scatter flash, urban, and small stream flooding. So it's really minimal. This is really, really weak wording considering it is a tropical storm. I know it's only 40 miles an hour. It's about a weekend, about to make landfall. But again, they're not really mentioning storm surge. They're not expecting any winds. They're just mentioning the slights and just scattered flash flooding here. So it's gonna be very scattered and minimal effects. Thankfully, you probably won't even notice it's a tropical storm. If I'm being completely honest, like if you're in Tallahassee, if you're in Gainesville, if you're in Big Bend, Florida, you're probably not gonna really feel it actually being a tropical storm. You may feel some gusts and all, but other than that, it's not gonna be anything too different. And tropical storm conditions are expected through tonight in portions of Florida Panhandle, where a tropical storm warning is in effect. So again, there is a tropical storm warning. Here's the overall look at the cone here. So tropical storm warnings are all the way from basically near Cedar Key, all the way up near areas near Mexico Beach and Apalachicola. So very, 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 very small wind field. You can barely even see the wind field itself. I find it very interesting that they did name this as a tropical storm. Because although it just did not look like a tropical storm, if I'm being completely honest. So again, there's the track. Again, I'm gonna go through the basically Chattahoochee, sorry, the Okefenokee Swamp. There we go. The Okefenokee Swamp there across Georgia, going near Jacksonville, and then a week into a tropical depression as it goes up the Gulf Stream here, and due to the overall strong trough and overall again the ridge, the north axis. It's going to keep it from going up the East Coast and going to head for Bermuda, actually. So another thing to watch out for Bermuda. The overall wind speed probabilities, there's really only a 30 to 40% chance for these winds. That's going to be obviously for the coast there in Big Bend. And again, this is just going to be very, very minor storm. So here's the latest look here at the ASCAP pass. And this is actually more of a half pass. So we don't really have full data within this last ASCAP. Actually, new recon as well as in its way within Larry, but that's gonna probably come out way after this video is published. So there you see, this one sustains 966 and 95 knots. So basically, exactly what the National Hurricane Center has. Again, this is a rather old update, but you see the really strong kind of counterclockwise winds here, as well as see the nice southwesterlies. So again, still seeing an overall decent eye wall. Wish we had a full pass so we can get an idea how the eye was, or not the eye itself, but where the actual low pressure and how that was doing here, because obviously the storm is starting to fall apart a little bit, but overall you can tell there is still some really strong winds, still supporting 110 miles an hour. And let's now get a look here at, let's see here, which actually I forgot which one's working. Let's look at the 36 temp, or actually half, I guess at 36. I'm trying to find which one I actually should look at best. I'm trying to find which pass or which one of these data is actually the best in this pass. I believe, I can't remember which one was working here, but here's the overall look at 89 brightness temperature overall in Kelvin. So Kelvin temperature, obviously. So you can overall see there is a warm core within this storm here. Overall warm core, obviously. So that is indicating we are seeing some good eye wall structure within the system. But yeah, overall it's looking like a decent system based on this half pass. Seeing overall some decent warm core really sorry, a cold core. Sorry, we're not saying warm core. Oopsie, I meant to say cold core. So we're saying cold core temperatures, and that is indicating an eye, decent stone structuring eye wall, and overall concentrical. You can kind of see the overall concentrical structure, like you see like a bone arrow, or like the I guess the bone arrow where you aim at the I guess the target. You can kind of see there the lines there, and that's indicating it is concentrical. So I meant to say cold core. Sorry, not to warm core. But there you see the overall structure. Kind of again, obviously tropical systems are cold core, not warm core. Warm core will probably just be more extratropical, if not even subtropical in some cases. But here's a look at the half pass on 36, brightest temperature. As well, you can still see a decent amount of convection, but it's kind of more annular. We're not seeing much outer banding here, and obviously seeing a little bit limited outflow channels due to the shear and dry air. So here's a look. Here's now a look here at Hurricane Larry, and it's very annular, as you can tell. It did lose its eye there. That convection burst basically ate it up. The eye could no longer withstand that convection. It just became very disorganized, and it couldn't stay. It just couldn't stay really open anymore. But there's the overall upper level anticyclone there, the overall outflow channel. We are seeing a decent outflow channel with a developing outflow channel over here on the southeastern quadrant. That is indicating we are still seeing that divergent flow. But in basically other words, this is still more annular. We're not really seeing extreme banding within this outflow. Just seeing a few cirrus clouds stretching out a few hundred miles. But that's really it. I mean, we have a decent, impressive outflow channel right here to the north of the system itself. But again, it's basically practically connected this whole way, so it's really not too crazy in its annular. Still seeing that strong counterclockwise flow within the eye wall itself, but again, it did eat up the eye. So this is just indicating the storm is going to start falling apart and just become a big blob of convection. But yeah, that's basically what we have so far within Hurricane Larry. Again, it's obviously losing its structure. But again, it's definitely still a pretty decent looking storm. Still 110 miles an hour. Obviously, it looked a lot better earlier on. You see, I actually saw a lot better banding here. This was obviously earlier on a few hours ago. I actually saw some more multiple outflow channels, and now you go to now, and that's what it looks like. I mean, you kind of see just completely different structure. So it's definitely starting to really weaken a lot. So here's the overall cone forecast on the overall Hurricane Larry. So there you see an overall annular and more symmetrical eye. Sorry, not eye. Sorry, wind field basically. You just split it in half where the low circulation is, and that's exactly where you see pretty dead even. That's exactly why there are warnings for Bermuda. And obviously, it's going to continue to see as a hurricane, then become post-tropical, anything extratropical, as it gets closer to Newfoundland. Let's dive deeper here into Hurricane Larry. So wave heights, you can see there are some pretty significant waves considering it's still a strong system. So getting on the northern quadrant around 36-foot waves. Then get even higher waves up to 40 feet. But seeing overall, we're still seeing again, it's going to be the cause of the widespread threat for some surf as well as some overall dangerous and uh, life-threatening not storm surge. I can't think of the word. Oh my gosh, rip current. There we go, rip current. So we're gonna watch out for some rip current all the way from the Carolinas up to Newfoundland because of the widespread large waves and overall really choppy waters. Let's now get a look here at the overall wind speed now, obviously from the GFS. So like I said, we're gonna really watch out for some tropical storm winds to actually tropical storm wind gusts, mainly for Bermuda. You can see the really strongest winds GFS wants is going to be around maybe 30 to 33 miles an hour for Bermuda, which obviously is not tropical storm winds. So just allow for gusts. Tropical storm winds is now going to gust. And there you're seeing gusts at 38, probably 39, maybe even 40 there. So we're going to be seeing even struggling to get tropical storm wind gusts according to the GFS. But let's actually take a look at what the other models are including the NAM. As well, we're going to watch out for some significant gusts all the way up to Newfoundland here. Let's now go a little bit further into the North Atlantic. You can kind of see Newfoundland may actually get some significant gusts there, up to probably, that's pretty high actually, some values there. I don't know why they have 174. Oh my god, they have 193 knot gusts. Or no, it's actually kilometers per hour actually. Let's now go here into 10 meter wind gusts and knots. There we go. That makes better sense. So as you see, you're gonna get gusts maybe up to around 84 to around maybe 85 miles an hour here across Newfoundland. So still gonna be seeing some significant winds. Obviously, more significant winds than we're seeing Bermuda. You see, the shear is gonna make this storm basically lopsided, allowing just the strongest winds in the eastern quadrant. So really lacking across Bermuda there, even a struggle. Let's look at the 10-meter wind gusts and knots again. Really struggling to get really much, really make it 39, 40, 42 mile an hour gusts, but it's still really struggle. So Bermuda may, I mean, I don't think the tropical storm warning was really the best move. I think the watch was a little bit more reasonable. But yeah, this is what the GFS wants to have. So now here's a look here at tropical storm Mindy here on satellite. And there's the actual low circulation right there. It does seem to be close as of reports of the National Hurricane Center. There's the overall good amount of convection. This is obviously just south of Florida. It's expected to make landfall rather soon. There's really no lightning. It's really this organized area of convection basically. However, there does seem to be a closed low circulation. However, we have no ASCAT data. However, we do have a little bit of buoy data that is predicting or actually supporting here. There's a buoy right basically near Mindy that's supporting that rather low pressure and the rather strong winds here, which we'll get a look at. But here's now a look at the overall visible and IR here. Again, it's not the prettiest at IR. I mean, we basically have very just scattered convection across. There's the actual convection itself. Basically, the low pressure is just west of all that convection. So again, it's not really the best looking system. So I think that's the whole debate. I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, why would they name this?" I honestly, there is no evidence, at least what I've seen, that there is a closed low circulation. However, the buoy data is definitely interesting here. I mean, it definitely would support a tropical system and not an inverse or tropical depression. So that's definitely something to keep a close eye on. But let's go ahead and show you guys that buoy data we have right next to Mindy. So let's now get into the actual buoy here. So here's the buoy right here. So looking at the National Buoy Center, and there's that buoy right here. So here is where Mindy is right now. Let's see here, wind gusts, or obviously maximum winds at 40 miles an hour with wind gusts up to 50 miles an hour, and obviously minimal center pressures at 1,008 millibars. So that's what we have as of now. But there's this buoy right. This is the closest buoy we have so far, and this is obviously has basically recent data, so it's very reliable, and actually it is definitely pretty interesting here. So let's get a look at the overall details on this buoy here. This is station 42039 near Pensacola, or just, let's see here, basically, yeah, southeast of Pensacola. But yeah, here's a look at the buoy here. We actually do have a few pictures of the actual buoy itself. But let's get the overall information we have as of the last data, or last input. So this is actually picking up here 44.7 knots, which is basically around 50-ish miles an hour, which is obviously what we're expecting here. We are looking at waves up to 13.1 feet. The actual wind speed itself there is 33 knots, which is basically around 40-ish. Actually, no, that's 39. I think that's like 39 miles an hour with gusts supporting over 50. But though, here's the overall wind speed at 10 meters, which is obviously the important one we want to look at. That is basically 37 knots, which is obviously around 41 to 42 miles an hour, with wind speed at 20 meters at around 39 knots, which is basically around 45-ish miles an hour. But here's the overall past information we have. So the strongest gust we actually got earlier was 46.6 knots, when this obviously was a lot further southwestward. Biggest wave height we actually got so far was, that latest information, was 13.1 feet. But look at the pressure though. The pressure as well is pretty low, 29.77 inches in mercury. So it's really rather low pressure. I believe that's what, I'm actually not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure it's like 1,001 millibars picked up on this buoy, which is basically right next to Mindy, basically. Let's actually get a look here at the overall information from this buoy here. So I'm actually going to zoom in on this so you guys can get a better idea. I'm not sure why my screen always does that, but here's the overall information there on this buoy. So wind speed has obviously increased in the past few hours. This is obviously as basically 00 Greenwich Mountain, or actually GMT, which I believe is Greenwich Mean Time. Yeah, it's Greenwich meantime basically. So 0 Z there, which is this is 19 CDT basically, so it's 19 Central. So basically here's a big spike as we got this late information here. So obviously as Mindy has moved into the direction, moving directly past this buoy not too long ago, information has really spiked here. So wind gusts are now up to, let's see here, wind gusts are actually up to around surpassing 45, which is basically above 40, just above 50 miles an hour, with the actual wind speed itself getting nearly 30, basically right above 35 knots, which we saw was around 36.9 is what we got. And then look at the pressure. That the pressure, air pressure, has really dropped. You can see it was a lot higher there, near 30 inches of mercury, but it has now dipped all the way near 29.70 or 29.73 basically. That's obviously rather low pressure. It's around 1,001, 1,002. So this is picking up some rather low pressure, and this is definitely supporting us. Obviously, around 40-ish to 42-mile-an-hour winds in miles an hour. So here's a few pics of the actual buoy itself there, so you can see some decent waves. I apologize, I'm not sure. I wish it would go one by one, but here's the overall look of all the waves there. You see, not the best condition. So actually, this makes it look like a tropical storm. I know how I was mentioning in the beginning of the video, you probably won't notice it once it actually makes landfall. But when you look at the buoy, which is basically right next to Mindy, you can definitely see this is definitely looking like a decent tropical storm.